I only saw it for the first time 3 weeks after we moved in. It was a classic New England colonial. Big, drafty, and full of history we were probably better off not knowing. The attic was the worst, just a massive, unfinished space under the eaves, smelling of dust and something vaguely metallic. We mostly kept the door locked and left it alone. Then one Thursday, I was taking out the trash around 11 at night. Our bedroom window is right above the main door, and as I looked up, I saw it. A light. Not a bright modern bulb, but a sickly yellow-orange glow, like a flickering gas lamp shining from the small dusty window at the very peak of the attic. I froze. We hadn't run electrical up there yet, and even if we had, there was no fixture by that window. Besides, the attic door was locked. The first thing I did was check the breaker box. No tripped fuses. The second was to get the spare key and fling open the attic door. The darkness that spilled out felt heavier than air, and the air inside was cold, dead cold, even though it was summer. I went up the pull-down stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was no light source, no bulb, no candle, no flashlight, nothing. The attic was exactly as we'd left it. I tried to rationalize it. I chalked it up to reflections, maybe a street lamp catching the glass just right. But the light came back, always between 11 at night and 3 in the morning. Sometimes it was steady, sometimes it pulsed slowly, like a dying heart. My wife saw it too once while getting a glass of water. She didn't scream, just stood by the sink, trembling. She never mentioned it again, pretending it didn't exist. But I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't pretend. Last night I watched it again from the yard. It was a solid, unwavering beam this time, but as I stared, my blood ran cold. The light didn't stay put. It began to move, slowly dragging itself across the tiny pane of glass. It wasn't the light itself moving, though. It was the shadow behind the light, whatever was holding the old lamp. It paused, centered itself on the glass, and then slowly, a faint dark shape pressed itself against the window from the inside. It looked like the outline of a child's head, disproportionately large, and it was staring straight down at me. I sprinted back inside, slammed the attic door, locked it, and shoved a chair under the knob. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't want to terrify her. But this morning, the old skeleton key that unlocks the attic was gone from its hook. And when I checked our bedroom window, the dust on the sill had a small, finger-drawn arc through it, like something had been tracing a line from inside to outside. I'm sitting in the kitchen now. It's 10:55 p.m. and I can hear the faint, high-pitched squeak of the attic stairs being slowly pulled down one by one directly above me. For as long as I can remember, the woods behind my grandfather's cabin were my sanctuary. Every summer was spent there, exploring the endless pines and mossy rocks that led down to the river. It was a place of comfort, of peace. But inside the cabin, there was one thing that always felt off. A massive, antique mirror in the living room. It was framed in dark, heavy wood and stood about 5 feet tall. Everyone in the family disliked it. The glass was old and warped, and it had this unsettling habit of stretching your reflection, making you look unnaturally thin and tall. It was a funhouse mirror that wasn't supposed to be funny. 2 years ago, I found myself alone at the cabin for the last week of August. The seasons were turning, the days were getting shorter, and a distinct chill was creeping into the air. One afternoon, I was getting ready for a hike. I leaned into the mirror, adjusting a strap on my backpack, when a flicker of movement in the reflection caught my eye. Something was wrong. I stared, trying to place the feeling of unease. There was my reflection, looking back at me, and behind my reflection, the reflection of the living room. But that wasn't all. Over my shoulder in the reflected image, a third figure stood. It was just outside the reflected window, shrouded in the deep shadows of the porch, looking in. The shape was humanoid but disturbingly tall and gaunt. It was unnervingly still, its head tilted at an angle that seemed unnatural, almost broken. My heart hammered against my ribs. I spun around expecting to see someone on the porch. Nothing. Just the empty, dusty porch boards visible through the glass. No one was there. I slowly turned back to the mirror, my breath held tight in my chest. The third reflection was gone. It was just me in the familiar stretched-out room. I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light, I told myself. The old imperfect glass playing with shadows. It had to be. The next day, it happened again. I walked into the living room, and my eyes instinctively darted to the mirror. And there it was. The same tall, gaunt figure looming in the shadow of the mirrored porch, but this time, it was closer to the window. My reflection's eyes were wide with a terror I could feel in my own bones. But the strangest part, the part that truly chilled me to my core, was that the figure wasn't looking at my reflection. It was staring past it, its gaze fixed on my reflection's back. It was looking at me, at the real me standing in the room. That night's sleep was impossible. I dragged a heavy armchair and wedged it under the doorknob, a flimsy barricade against an unseen dread. The mirror was the source of it all. I couldn't stand to look at it, to even be in the same room with it. I found a thick, heavy blanket and draped it over the entire mirror, feeling like a terrified child hiding from monsters under the covers. But it worked. For the rest of my short stay, I didn't see the figure again. The oppressive feeling in the cabin lessened, but the fear lingered. I packed my bags and left a day early, driving away as fast as I could, feeling like I was escaping a waking nightmare. I never went back. Life moved on. The cabin, the mirror, the figure. They all became a distant, unsettling memory. Until last week. My brother sent me a text. He's preparing to sell the cabin and had gone out to take some interior photos for the listing. He sent me a few shots. The kitchen, the bedrooms, and then the living room. The last photo was a wide shot, and my stomach dropped. There was the mirror, uncovered. In my panicked departure, I must have forgotten to put the blanket back on it. My brother's caption read, "Creepy, right? Look at the glare." I zoomed in. The reflection was crystal clear, showing the empty room behind him. There was no third figure, no shadowy form on the porch. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe it really was all in my head. But then my eyes caught something else, something not in the reflection, but on the glass itself. In the bottom right corner of the mirror, etched into the surface, was a single thin line, a scratch, a faint, curved line, almost like a smile. It was right where the mouth of the mirror figure would have been. My brother hadn't even seen it until I, horrified, pointed it out to him. He just thought it was a scuff on the old glass. Now I can't shake the feeling. I live in a modern apartment miles away from that cabin in the woods, but my hallway mirror, lately it seems a little too tall, a little too stretched. And sometimes, just sometimes when I pass it quickly out of the corner of my eye, I think I see a shadow that doesn't belong. Not one shadow, not two, but three distinct sets of shadows playing on the wall behind me. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a story that defies explanation, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unsettling tales. Stay safe out there. They call it the Black Creek Reservoir, but anyone who grew up around here knows it by its real name, the Bottomless Lake. It's a deep, cold, man-made abyss gouged out of the earth decades ago. The water is so dark it looks like spilled oil, a perfect, unreflective mirror to the sky above. It just swallows the light. My summer job a few years back was on the cleanup crew for the reservoir. It sounds simple enough, clearing brush, hauling away trash from the steep rocky shoreline. But from the first day, something felt off. It wasn't the isolation or the eerie quiet you'd expect. It was the sound, a low, constant thrumming. not the hum of machinery from the distant dam or the groaning of old pipes. This was different. It was a deep, resonating bass note that you felt more than you heard, vibrating up from the soles of your boots, right into your bones. It seemed to pulse from the very heart of the lake itself. We'd joke about it, of course. Generators acting up again, someone would say, but their smile never quite reached their eyes. We all knew. The sound was coming from the water, deep down. One sweltering afternoon, I was working alone, clearing a tangled patch of thorny vines near a small, secluded inlet. The thrumming was louder here, a persistent pressure against my eardrums that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. The air was thick and heavy. I decided to take a break, wiping sweat from my forehead, and sat on a smooth, flat rock right at the water's edge. The lake was completely still, like a sheet of polished obsidian. Not a ripple. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't a shout or a call that you might hear from across the water. It was a whisper, but it was so clear, so intimate, it sounded like it was spoken directly into my ear. I was completely alone, miles from the rest of the crew. The voice was breathy and wet, like the sound of someone trying to talk while submerged, water gurgling with every syllable. It said two words, and I'll never forget the chilling clarity. Come closer. I scrambled backwards so fast I scraped my hands on the gravel, my heart suddenly a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I tried to rationalize it instantly. The wind, right? A weird echo off the rock face behind me. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation, anything to anchor myself back to reality. I stood up, my legs trembling, and started to walk away, telling myself I was just tired, dehydrated. But the voice came again. This time it was more insistent, laced with a new sound. A horrible, ragged noise that I recognized immediately as the deep, painful gasp of someone desperately trying to breathe. They're waiting. I didn't wait to hear more. I just ran. I didn't look back. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at my face, not stopping until my boots hit the hot, solid asphalt of the access road. The world felt solid again there, safe. I quit the job that week. I made up some excuse about a sudden family emergency. I never told a soul what I really heard. How could I? I sounded crazy. A month later, the story hit the local news. A teenage boy had gone missing from the reservoir. He'd gone out kayaking alone in the late afternoon. Search and rescue teams scoured the area for days. They found his bright yellow kayak floating empty near that same secluded inlet, gently bumping against the shore. But there was no sign of the boy. They dragged the deepest section of the lake, right where the old river channel carves a canyon into the reservoir floor. They sent divers down into the cold black water. They found nothing. It was like he had simply vanished. I was watching the news coverage, a cold dread washing over me, trying to push down the memory of that whisper. They showed the boy's last known photo, a selfie he'd posted to his social media page about an hour before he went missing. In it, he's smiling, sitting in his kayak, holding up a peace sign. Behind him, the water is a deep, unreflective black void. The news anchor moved on to another story, but I couldn't look away from the picture on the screen. I told myself to turn it off, but I felt compelled to look closer. I pulled up the news site on my laptop, found the image, and zoomed in. My blood ran cold. Right where the black water met the rocky shoreline, just under the surface, you could make it out. It was faint, blurry from the water's distortion, but unmistakable. The pale, ghostly outline of a human hand. The fingers were stretched upward, almost elegantly, as if reaching to gently graze the bottom of the kayak's hull. Years have passed. I try not to think about it. I moved away. I bought a house in a place with no lakes, no rivers, not even a creek. I sleep with a fan on for white noise, but sometimes in that quiet moment just before I drift off to sleep, I still hear it, not the gasping plea anymore. It's different now. It's a soft, wet chuckle, like the sound of water bubbling up in the back of a throat, a sound of quiet amusement. But the reason I'm telling you this now is because of what happened today. I went to check my mailbox, just like any other day, and inside, sitting on top of the letters, was a single stone. It was perfectly smooth, worn down by water and completely dry. It wasn't a normal river stone, though. It was the same unique slate-black color as the rocks from the bottom of the Black Creek Reservoir. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. My hand was shaking as I turned it over, scratched deeply into the stone, as if by a sharp piece of metal were two words. We found you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you felt that chill down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there and maybe stay away from the water.